Seriously, June is so packed with massive heavy hitters, experimental indie darlings, and ground-up remakes that it is becoming impossible to keep track of what's actually worth your time. So, we did the heavy lifting for you. We sifted through all the fluff, skipped the filler, and narrowed the entire month down to the absolute essentials.
As you seek out the enemy's stronghold to restore peace in the Lilat system.
It finally happened. Out of absolutely nowhere, Nintendo dropped a surprise direct and confirmed that Fox McCloud is back. Launching this June, the simply titled Star Fox for the Nintendo Switch 2 is a ground-up, visually spectacular remake of the legendary Star Fox 64. Now, on one hand, the gameplay looks mind-bogglingly gorgeous. It's a pure, unadulterated rail shooter, proving Nintendo knows exactly where this franchise excels. But on the other hand, it's also sparked an immediate massive debate across the community. See, Nintendo went in a wildly unexpected direction with the art style. They've traded the classic clean-cut anime puppet look for a gritty, highly detailed cinematic aesthetic. The characters look significantly more animalistic, right down to realistic fur textures and avian talons. Some fans are a bit jarred by it, while original designer Takaya Imamura actually came out and praised the direction, saying it's exactly what he envisioned back in 1997 if the hardware hadn't limited him. Visuals aside, what's really exciting here are the mechanical additions. Nintendo is leaning hard into the narrative with an all-new prologue chapter exploring James McCloud's doomed mission to Venom alongside fully voiced dialogue. Plus, we're getting a brilliant asymmetric co-op mode that lets one player act as the pilot while a second player acts as the gunner. It's exactly the kind of smart, local multiplayer iteration you want to see from next-gen hardware. Is remaking Star Fox 64 yet again a safe play? Maybe, but by pairing that bulletproof, branching level design with bleeding-edge visuals and genuinely fresh mechanics, Nintendo might just give this series the definitive revival it's desperately needed for a decade.
One person to save everyone. Maybe along the way.
If you've played a Square Enix game from Team Asano over the last few years, you pretty much know what to expect. They are the absolute undisputed kings of modern, turn-based JRPGs wrapped in that gorgeous, nostalgic HD 2D art style. But with the adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales, they are throwing their own rulebook completely out the window, dropping this June. This is Team Asano's very first foray into full-on real-time action. Instead of waiting your turn in a menu, you're actively hacking, slashing, and parrying your way through the untamed continent of Philadelphia. The combat here is incredibly snappy. You can equip 2 of the game's 7 distinct weapon types at any given time, ranging from standard swords and bows to more chaotic chains and sickles, and fluidly swap between them mid-battle to string together combos. It actually feels a lot less like Octopath and a lot more like a beautiful modern evolution of classic 16-bit Mana or top-down Legend of Zelda. Structure-wise, the inspiration is clear. You're exploring a world packed with hidden caves, puzzle shrines, and massive dungeons that reward you with health upgrades and magicite fragments to customize your gear. But the real wild card is your fairy companion, Faye. Not only does she handle mechanical puzzles, but a second player can actually jump in locally to control her, turning the game into a seamless co-op adventure where you can literally warp directly to her position to cross massive gaps. Throw in a time travel narrative that has you jumping across a millennium to alter the past and present, and Square Enix might just have a massive sleeper hit on their hands. When Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launched on the PS5, it was widely considered a visual titan, a game so massive and resource heavy that it literally required 2 full Blu-ray discs just to install. So when Square Enix announced it was coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 this June, the immediate collective reaction across the internet was, how on earth is that going to work? Well, the free eShop demo dropped, and the answer is a fascinating mix of engineering black magic, AI upscaling, and some incredibly aggressive structural compromise. At the absolute center of why this game works is its combat. It completely refines the real-time action and turn-based hybrid system from Remake, polishing out the clunkiness and adding a massive layer of depth through synergy abilities. Instead of your party members just fighting independently in the background, you're constantly pairing them up for team-up attacks that cost 0 MP, but dynamically build your ATB bars. It forces you to constantly switch characters mid-fight, turning every battle into a fast-paced, highly tactical rhythm game where you're juggling aggression, parrying, and spellcasting on the fly, but where Rebirth truly takes a massive gamble is its open-world structure. It trades the tight, linear corridors of Midgar for 6 massive, visually distinct regions. Now, if you try to treat this like a checklist, clearing every Ubisoft-style tower and combat trial back-to-back, you will burn out. The magic of Rebirth is that it behaves like a massive theme park. Each region introduces entirely unique traversal mechanics, hidden lore fragments, and a staggering amount of surprisingly deep-side content, from the addictive Queen's Blood card game to fully functional piano rhythm mechanics. It's a game that thrives on sheer variety, effortlessly balancing high-stakes narrative tension with absolute mechanical whimsy. Square Enix took one of the most beloved games of all time, refused to play it safe, and delivered an epic 100-hour odyssey that proves the journey is entirely worth the ride. We all know cyberpunk, high-tech, low-life, rain-slicked neon streets, and a corporate boot stamping on a human face forever. It's the dominant flavor of sci-fi dystopia. But what if we decided that the future didn't have to suck? Welcome to Solarpunk. If cyberpunk is the warning, Solarpunk is the aspiration. It's a movement, an aesthetic, and yes, an emerging game genre that asks, what does a sustainable, equitable, and technologically advanced human civilization actually look like? And no, it's not just painting everything green and sticking a solar panel on it. At its core, Solarpunk is radical optimism. It imagines a future where humanity has successfully integrated high technology with natural ecosystems, moving past extraction and towards symbiosis. In gaming, this translates to entirely new mechanics. Forget standard survival games where you punch trees to build a base. Solarpunk games are about ecosystem restoration. Think mechanics where you have to cultivate soil health, balance water tables, and cooperate with nature. Instead of conquering the map, you're trying to heal it. Games like Terra Nil or Cloud Gardens are leading the charge. They emphasize recycling, renewable energy systems, and community cooperation. The protagonists aren't typically grizzled soldiers. They are engineers, gardeners, and community organizers. Technology in Solarpunk isn't something that alienates us or pollutes the sky. It is elegant, often decentralized, 3D printed, or repurposed. Mechanically, this opens up incredible avenues for cooperative gameplay. Instead of standard PvP-based raiding, these titles lean heavily into community logistics. You and your friends are managing solar grids, building localized hydroponic setups, and designing symbiotic relationships between your community and the surrounding nature. Tech upgrades feel like genuine tools for stewardship rather than weapons of mass destruction. It turns out that building something sustainable can be just as mechanically rewarding, addictive, and deeply satisfying as tearing a digital world apart. Solarpunk is proving that optimism isn't boring. It's just a much better blueprint for the future of survival games. Look at the arcade sports genre over the last decade. It's felt a little quiet. We all miss the absolute golden era of mid-2000s extreme sports games, that beautiful pocket of time where realism took a back seat to pure stylized attitude. Well, the developers at Undercoders clearly missed it too, because they looked at that classic formula and decided to ask the single most unhinged question possible: what if you treated a multi-ton Japanese bullet train exactly like a skateboard? Enter Denshattack, launching this June, set in a colorful dystopian Japan where the population is trapped inside massive domed cities. You play as Emmy, a young delivery driver fighting to out-trick rival gangs and dismantle a shady megacorp. But let's talk about how this actually plays, because the mechanical gameplay is incredibly smart. It's an arcade 3D platformer where you are carrying a massive amount of forward momentum. You have a drift button that lets you multi-track drift around corners, feeling remarkably like a high-speed Mario Kart, but the second you leave the ground, the game completely transforms into Tony Hawk. You're actively performing ollies, kickflips, and massive 720-degree spins with a 50-ton train. You have to hop between parallel lines, grind on guardrails, and string together massive combo multipliers before sticking the landing back on the tracks. The controls are incredibly fine-tuned and responsive, which is necessary because crashing into a wall at 500 km/h means instant death. It's physics-defying nonsense, but it's anchored by incredibly tight momentum-based platforming logic. Toss in insane madcap boss battles like fighting a giant mechanical worm or a literal moving castle, and a killer soundtrack featuring legends like Telopes and Shoji Meguro, and you have a recipe for pure arcade joy.
Heroes, your next mission.
If we're being completely honest, when you hear that a major franchise is getting its own themed version of Monopoly, you already know the drill. It's usually just a basic visual reskin. The property names change, the paper money gets a new logo, but underneath, you're still playing the exact same friendship ruining game from 1935. But Ubisoft and Behavior Interactive looked at that trend and decided to try something genuinely radical. Dropping this June, Monopoly Star Wars Heroes vs. Villains completely throws out the ancient rules to build something that feels way more like a tactical digital strategy game. See, this isn't an every man for himself capitalist sprint, this is a highly competitive team-based arena showdown built entirely around 2v2 and 3v3 modes, playable either in online PvP or right next to each other on the couch. Instead of moving a single lone silver token around the board, you were assembling an entire squad from a massive roster of over 25 iconic Star Wars figures. And the kicker? They all have unique active character abilities. You might use Princess Leia to strategically manipulate space ownership, or pull out Darth Vader to completely disrupt your opponent's resource pool. How you build your roster synergy completely defines your strategy. Even the core board interactions have been entirely reworked into combat mechanics. You aren't just buying empty land anymore, landing on the same space as an enemy player triggers an immediate high-stakes dice battle to determine who actually controls that location. Add in dynamic galaxy-wide go events that throw random tactical missions at both teams mid-match, and the fact that going directly to jail literally means getting frozen in a cinematic block of carbonite, and you get an experience that prioritizes momentum and conflict over slow financial starvation. If you're a fan of cult classic Nintendo DS murder mysteries like Hotel Dusk Room 215 or Another Code, your ears probably perked up when legendary writer Rika Suzuki announced her return to the genre. But while Dark Auction carries that same signature narrative DNA, its core gameplay introduces a concept that is completely delightfully bizarre. Instead of walking into an auction room with a briefcase full of cash, this game asks you to walk in and bid with your actual literal memories. The gameplay is sharply divided into two distinct halves. First, you have the exploration phase. You move through a 3D castle in first person, investigating historical relics tied to a mysterious figure known as Dictator X, and talking to a highly suspicious cast of characters. As you pry into their secrets, you don't just take standard notes. The game uses a word cloud system, automatically logging keywords, contradictions, and historical facts. It plays out like a deliberate atmospheric point-and-click adventure where gathering the correct data is absolutely vital for survival. Because when night falls, the real game begins. During the high-stakes auction phase, a character hooks up to a memory reconstruction machine called the EPO. Since trauma and secrets naturally distort what people remember, their bids will fail or worse, kill them if their memories are incorrect. As their supporter, you step in to solve multi-stage memory puzzles, you fill in missing details from the scene, arrange fragmented events into a chronological timeline, and actively deploy your word cloud clues to point out the objective lies and mistakes in their recollection. If you make a mistake, your client's health bar takes a massive hit. But if you successfully reconstruct the truth, the bid succeeds, unlocking a massive wave of narrative payoff. When we play video games to live out a law enforcement fantasy, it usually involves high-speed sports cars, cinematic shootouts, and breaking every known traffic law to bring down a cartel. But Acer Interactive looked at that and said, nah. What if we made them do actual paperwork? Enter Police Simulator Patrol Officers. It's a game that ditches the Hollywood action to give you the slow, meticulous reality of everyday beat cops. And the weirdest part, it is incredibly hard to stop playing. You start your career as a rookie in the fictional city of Brighton, armed with nothing but a radar gun and a ticket book. The core gameplay here isn't about reflexes, it's about observation and protocol. You're actively looking for people littering, checking if license plate registration stickers are expired, or checking if someone parked too close to a crosswalk. If you just go around arresting everyone like a rogue action hero, the game penalizes your conduct points. You have to be tough but fair, using your intuition system to pick up on nervous shifting or bloodshot eyes during routine questioning. It turns basic observation into a genuinely engaging puzzle mechanics, but as you rack up experience points and rank up, the game slowly opens up. You get a patrol car, unlock different districts, and the stakes start to rise. With recent expansions like Highway Patrol and Contraband, things can escalate in a hurry. You'll find yourself managing massive multi-car highway pileups, utilizing spike strips to systematically halt fleeing carjackers, or using substance analyzers and inspection mirrors at border checkpoints to hunt for illegal cargo. It brilliantly balances the mundane with sudden bursts of genuine procedural tension. Toss in a 2-player co-op mode that lets you split up the duties with a friend, and it becomes the ultimate podcast game, something highly systemic, deeply satisfying, and completely relaxing.
Crypto here. How's the view from the safe?
Look at the modern open-world sandbox genre. It often feels like it's taking itself just a little bit too seriously. We've traded the wild, unhinged experimentation of the mid-2000s for massive maps, hyper-realistic survival mechanics, and endless crafting menus. But back in 2005, Pandemic Studios looked at the burgeoning sandbox genre and decided to give us the ultimate antidote to open-world fatigue. They didn't want us to save a world, they wanted us to completely dismantle it. Enter Destroy All Humans, a game that proves being the bad guy is sometimes just a hell of a lot more fun. You play as Cryptosporidium 137, an aggressive, foul-mouthed alien clone sent to 1950s Earth to harvest human DNA and overthrow the government. And from a pure gameplay perspective, Crypto's toolkit is an absolute masterclass in chaotic fun. The game hands you an array of sci-fi weapons that defy any sense of balance. You have the Zap-O-Matic for crowd control, the Disintegrator Ray to melt targets down to ash, and the infamous Anal Probe gun. But the real star of the show is your psychic ability, being able to pick up cars, shipping containers, or a random passerby with your mind and hurl them over the horizon feels incredibly empowering. It trades tactical restraint for pure instant gratification, and when on-foot chaos isn't enough, you hop right into your flying saucer to rain absolute terror from above. The vehicle combat completely changes the scale of destruction, using the Death Ray to melt entire military bases, or launching a quantum deconstructor to level an entire city block into a smoking crater is deeply satisfying. The game structures its gameplay around short, punchy missions and wide-open sandbox zones, ensuring you're never more than 30 seconds away from triggering absolute ridiculous anarchy. It completely parodies B-movie sci-fi tropes, wrapping the destruction in a hilarious satirical script that aggressively roasts mid-century paranoia.
I'm not meant to be here.
Everywhere you look, there's a new title inviting you to farm, fish, chop wood, and completely escape the stresses of modern life. It's a genre built entirely on comfort, but Davey Radin, the brilliant, chaotic mind behind the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide, looked at this peaceful wave of games and decided to construct a massive, psychological Trojan horse. Enter Wanderstop. On the surface, you play as Alta, a former world-class warrior who now finds herself managing a magical tea shop nestled deep within a peaceful, mythical forest. The immediate gameplay looks exactly like a high-quality management sim. You grow exotic ingredients, harvest plants, mix custom tea blends using a complex physics-based grinding contraption, and serve an eccentric cast of traveling customers who wander through your shop. If you just look at the marketing, it looks like pure, unadulterated relaxation. But here's the brilliant mechanical twist. Alta doesn't want to be here. She hates the peace. She is a fighter trapped in a cozy game, and the narrative actively weaponizes the genre's mechanics against her. The game forces you to do mundane tasks, and the cleaner and quieter things get, the more Alta's internal trauma begins to bleed into the world. There are mandatory mechanics where you have to just sit on a bench and rest. But instead of being peaceful, it becomes a high-tension struggle against her own thoughts. The gameplay isn't just about brewing tea. It's an interactive study in forced isolation and identity crisis. It's an incredibly unique, metatextual subversion of expectations. Wanderstop uses the familiar, comforting loops of a cozy management game to tell a deeply compelling, uncomfortable story about a soldier who doesn't know how to exist without a war. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out one of the videos on screen right now. As always, I'm Cyril, big thanks to the community, and I'll see you on the next video.